Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to this Instagram Live. With us today, we have Rachel, who is currently an Oxford student studying medicine at Merton College. So if you were at the previous lives, that is the same college as Lewis, or rather Louis, who was studying physics yesterday. And I'll just go ahead and invite her so that she can join this live. And invited Rachel, so she should be joining in just a couple of moments. For anybody who hasn't been turning up or listening and tuning into these lives yet, during these series, we go through the sort of ins and outs of Oxbridge, what it's like, and demystifying it. So, hi Rachel, and
Hi.
thank you very much for joining us today. I was just giving a brief explanation to sort of the series that we're running together with UniReach. And yeah, I suppose I just said that you are currently studying medicine. You're a first year at Merton College, Oxford. But over to you. Yeah, could you just sort of give us a brief intro to, what sort of stage you're at and maybe sort of where you were before Oxford as well?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I'm a first year. I'm studying medicine. This is something I just arrived back yesterday. It's something my second term in Oxford because we were at home last term, and home for me is Northern Ireland, and that's where I applied from. That's where I did all of senior school there, and then and that's so I've got my exams starting on Friday. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm just in the middle of revision.
Cool. Yeah, so you're in first year, so you've just done your first year exams and just studying for your first year exams. And so I think one thing that we get asked a lot, or that a lot of students are thinking about, is how do you put together the personal statement when you are applying for medicine? You know, medicine is one of those super oversubscribed courses that's really difficult to get in for. What do you write on the personal statement? Where do you even begin? Because you'll be applying, against a ton of really super qualified applicants. How do you make yourself stand out? Especially because the personal statement is the first thing that I guess the admissions department will see when they're reviewing your application.
Yeah, no, I think the personal statement is definitely something that I was really stressing about it, but I think I started with I made this huge that's but I made a document I tried to write. I wrote everything that I'd done, everything that interested me, and everything I'd read, and everything I'd podcast, books, everything. And then what I tried to do was start, and I know maybe this year people in terms of work experience, that's something I tried we were told to talk about a lot, but I think this year it's probably different. I think I know some medical schools have said they don't mind as much about work experience, but what I tried to do then was find links. That's what I as a really really helpful piece of advice I was told about, was that they is to not be jumping around in your personal statement, is to find one kind of cohesive link, one thing that can tie everything together and then link everything back to it. And I took out, it really hurt to cut out these things that I was like, oh, I love this, I really like this, I really like what it says about me, or I really like something I'm really interested about. But if it didn't fit, it had to go, especially because you have to be so strict with the word count. So
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
trying to cram in sort of every reason that you want to apply, and
Yeah.
sort of why medicine
Mm-hmm.
into a very short sort of piece of text.
Mm-hmm.
So tying everything in, I mean, do you have a particular example of how you did that and connected the dots?
Yeah, absolutely. I am. So what I tried to do was I tried to pick like one attribute about myself, and then the area of medicine that really interested me. So I tried
Mhm.
to do. I kind of started around communication things. I tried to put in. For example, I did French A level, and I talked about, and I
Yeah,
did work experience on a labor ward, and I saw three births, and of those three, none of the women that were giving birth spoke English, and it was a
okay.
real problem. It was a real problem for the doctors because they were really struggling. They couldn't get anyone in to translate and things, and it was really interesting to see how they adapted and things. And that's what I was talking about. And I had that the whole way through about communication, the whole thing. And then and I took it off like, oh, and then that made me think about like translation and translation devices, and I looked at some AI and things like that, and just all these random things. And but then I also somehow managed to talk about the thing that interested me, which is drug addiction. That's what I don't yeah, tried to link it in. It's kind of the links seem a bit far-fetched at time, but I tried to make it work.
Yeah, that sounds like a crazy personal statement.
Yeah.
You've got sort of AI, you've got French, you've got pretty much everything going on in there. Do you think that, did you talk at all about your sort of hobbies or other extracurriculars that you did in that personal statement? Because I think a lot of people say, when you're applying to Oxbridge, you just focus on the academics and maybe have a tiny like sliver, maybe a paragraph on what you do outside, like a little bit of sports or other stuff that you like to do outside of the subject, but really just focus on, so if you're applying for medicine, why medicine? These, this is why I really stand out as an applicant for medicine.
Yeah, I tried to be really, really disciplined with they say 80-20, but I tried to make mine 90-10. I tried to push it to 95-5, but and my things, I really didn't mention anything at all apart from debating, because that there was a communication. And I mentioned that I mentioned that I grew up in the Middle East, because I managed to tie that back into communication as well. So I really didn't do anything else at all. I think maybe a bit extreme with mine, but I really, really wanted to focus on talking about the other things, and like the books I'd read, for example, instead of maybe sports and things like that.
And when you put that on the personal statement, because I think this is important for some students to know when they're applying. What I've seen in my experience is that people who are interviewing you will take the books that you've read, or sometimes they will take the books that you've read and you put on your personal statement, and they'll ask you questions about them in the interview, because it's sort of it's meant to be like an easy warmer up topic. And so I suppose for anybody who's thinking about putting a really difficult book that they haven't actually read on the personal statement, it's a good idea not to do that. I mean, when you went up for interview, did they start with one of those books as a starter topic? Did they start with your personal statement? Because I know that in some people's interviews, they just, it's as if they haven't even read the personal statement, and they will just fire up with like a really difficult question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say that I did 5 interviews, and I only got asked one question, one of them about my personal statement, and that was it. And I wouldn't bank on that if you're, I wouldn't. I would still revise everything in your personal statement. But it was something that, I mean, maybe slightly regretted that I mentioned the books, because they're really, and it was things that really interested me. But it then meant that I had to go through and learn everything and all these things about I had to go back and essentially revise the book before my. So I'm glad I picked one that I did enjoy. But no, I only got asked one question. It was really broad. It was, oh, you mentioned that you read this book about drug addiction. Can you? It was literally just, can you tell me a bit more about it? So.
Oh wow, yeah, that's quite surprising, I suppose, if you put a lot of effort into the personal statement, and they don't really ask you much.
Yeah.
It depends on the interviewer as well. What sort of questions did they ask you then when you were applying? Were they specific to sort of what the questions were? Because I'm not, my background is in law, so I did the law interviews, and what they would do is sometimes they would ask you sort of a little bit about what you've done in the past, sort of in terms of your experience, but mostly it was sort of, they would give you a piece of text to read before, and then you would sit outside, for 10 minutes before the interview, read that, and they'd ask you questions on that. Or they might also ask you about an essay sort of that you wrote and did for the admissions test. Is that sort of a similar setup, but I suppose medicine related?
Well, actually, I didn't get given any pre-reading for any of my things. It was all sort of just in the deep end in the interviews. We were told beforehand that we got taken in and kind of debrief is afterwards, but pre-briefed, and they said that they wanted us, they gave us this whole thing about how they wanted us to be, very scientific, and that they weren't really looking for people that wanted to be GPs, but they said they want us to be, have that real scientific approach to medicine. And so, which was handy that they told us that beforehand, and then one of my interviews, I think I maybe got handed 6 graphs in a 20-minute interview, and it was just one after another, like bam, 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 describe this and draw this and add this on. And so it was definitely, I wouldn't say there were any interviews where it was kind of, they're all really, really heavily science-based, the ones that I had. It was, very much just drawing upon a lot of maths, actually, in chemistry as well.
How did you feel then when they were giving you like all those graphs, just 6 graphs in a row? Did you feel like the interviews went badly? Because one like sort of string that I found is often you'll feel like you did really badly in an interview, but actually you did really well. And one of the reasons for that being that if the interviewer thinks that you're good, they will really press you, and so they'll ask you really tough questions and just push you. Whereas if they think, this candidate is not particularly strong, maybe after the first one or two questions, they won't try to torture you. They'll just sort of just ask you easy ones. And so you can come out of the interview thinking, oh, that was super easy. But actually you weren't able to show that you were of sort of, not necessarily Oxbridge material, but you didn't have sort of the same intellectual rigor that they were really looking for.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt like mine went really badly. I was, but I think, yeah, I think it was very, like, for example, in the one where they just kept giving me graphs, that's what I was worrying about. I was like, oh, are they moving on because they're just like, oh, she can't do this, so let's just move on. But I think, I don't know. I mean, looking back on it now and having spoken to my tutors a bit, I think they really were just trying to get it, see a wide range of what we could do as well. I think in terms of which makes me feel a bit better. But I definitely did feel, I felt they went badly, and I felt they went badly in the, I think a lot of people were like, oh, the interview went so badly, but I think I did genuinely feel like they went badly. But yeah. So I would say, that's, I mean, encouraging. If I felt mine went off, just go recall.
No problem. No, that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess it's heartening if for anybody who goes up to interview, they think they've done really badly. Don't give up. Try and keep doing well in the next interview, because when you might have a couple. I think at Cambridge, you might have one or two. In Oxford, they really try to give you a lot of interviews, but sort of stay motivated, get through them, and just do your best. So moving topic slightly. We've done in the previous Instagram lives like a fun fact about the subject that you study, or about the college that you're at, so Merton or Oxford. Previously we've had stuff like the Merton time change. It's the time change, right?
Yeah, the time ceremony, yeah.
Time ceremony. We've heard that one before. And for medicine, one thing that my friends often told me about is that after like a sort of dissection, when you're working on these sort of cadavers, because of the formaldehyde, you end up getting a craving for meat. And I guess with doing remote learning, you may not have been into those observations or those rooms yet. But is that true? Is that like a myth, or does that actually happen? I'm not sure if those medics were just pulling my leg when they said that. Sort of when they were coming back from their their lessons, and they were just like, I need to tuck into a steak.
No, well, I had the second year say that to me. They prepared us for it whenever they thought we were having it in person. They were saying, oh, just get ready. And I think the big advice is they say don't go in hungover, because it's even worse then, I think. But yeah, I think they told us about a lot of a lot of different. I think that's a kind of a common theme in the medicine thing. I think they like to keep it quite, kind of like morbid jokes and things. That's my tutors. They're always, that's their favorite thing to talk about, is things like they tell us quite often, ways to kill someone without going to jail, and things like, I had a tutor go off on a 20-minute tangent about how the electric chair works, about how they, in America, like there's 3 different drugs that they administer to someone whenever they're doing that, and he had to like explain the whole thing to us just in this completely just nothing to do with what we were doing. But yeah, so
no, those tangents are the best. Sometimes you learn the most from tangents.
Yeah, I remember it.
I mean, because some of them is like some of them will just paralyze you, right, and stop you from breathing, and then electric chair, like what were those 3 methods then? I mean, I know we're slightly going off on a tangent now.
Yeah, well, actually, I said electric chair, but that's wrong. It's the it's the lethal injection, because you don't get them both. But yeah, what is there? Yeah, you get a potassium injection, because that causes a heart attack. Yeah, and that's what we were doing. We were talking about like ion balances and ion transport and things. So I suppose it is related, but and then you're right. And then you get a neuromuscular blocking drug as well. And that's also stuff that we've been working on. And then I think the third thing is, I think you get an anesthetic as well. But what he was really focusing on is he was going, and that's the kind of Oxford thing. That's like the interview thing. I think that's something I didn't really realize, or not didn't realize, but I suppose I feel a bit stupid now for not having clicked that the interviews are very similar to our tute format. That every tute sort of feels like although it is more relaxed, because there's nothing really banking on it, but it's definitely, he's saying, so what order do you think those need to go in, and why? And you have to justify. It's always, it is kind of similar to an interview.
Well, I mean, what tips would you have for like preparing for the interview? Because you don't know what's going to come up necessarily. It might be
Hmm.
to do with what your interviewer is particularly interested in. They might ask you about the personal statement. They might ask you about some random graphs that they're going to throw at you.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's so hard to prepare. And what do you think is the best thing that you could do, for example, for applying specifically for medicine? Like, what can you do? You can revise your personal statement,
Hmm.
but in your interviews, you did six. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 5 interviews.
You did
Yeah.
five interviews,
Hmm.
and the only in one of them they ask you like a tiny little question
Hmm.
about your personal statement. So
Yeah.
actually prepare for it then.
Um, I think that I did a lot of preparation. There were a lot of stuff that a lot of different types of preparation, and I think some of the things I did that maybe weren't as helpful were, things like I tried to, I tried to learn a lot about because at A level you don't really talk about a lot about the different organs, things like the pancreas, and I was like, oh, you need to learn what the pancreas does, um, but I think definitely in the interview they're more than happy if you say, oh, not really sure, they're more than happy to give you the basic information that you need to then use
Mm,
the skills that you already have. I think that's something I would have spent less time maybe doing that, maybe, straight revising, and maybe
yeah.
more of what I did was I printed out BBC articles and maybe once a week, and an article that had graphs, from their science section, and I just printed them out, and I would give them to my mum, give them to really anyone that would help, and I got her to try and just find questions from it and ask that, or and especially because my mum doesn't, she's a translator, so she doesn't really, the sciences is not her background, so me trying to explain the graph to her was really helpful. I think in trying to, just a random graph and something I'd never seen before, she would print it and I would explain it. So
No, that's a
that.
really good tip. I mean, so
Mhm.
Naman was on earlier, and he was explaining that when he was preparing for PPE, he also got his dad to ask him questions and just to do sort of interview prep like that.
Mhm.
So I suppose that was for PPE, and one question that I asked him was, if you have a parent who doesn't really know much about the subject you're applying for, can they still help you through? Like, can they
Mhm.
still prepare you? I suppose, especially for something like medicine, which sounds so specific, can a parent who doesn't necessarily have much knowledge about medicine help you prepare for the interview?
Yeah, no, my parents were really helpful. As long as I told them exactly what to do, then they were they were really happy. Especially for and with medicine, they really help. Especially my mom really helped with the kind of the more the less less scientific, more kind of clinical side for all the questions that I practiced about things like, or empathy and things like that. But definitely, I definitely I would I would say it was probably the most helpful with my mom, was just trying to and getting her to make me uncomfortable and interrupt me and things like that. That was the because she'd be most comfortable doing that.
Yeah. And how do you think you stayed motivated throughout this period? Because I think Oxbridge prep, like it can start way back in pretty much like when you finished. Well, I guess when I was doing it, we had AS levels. So
Hmm.
you do your ASs, and then you'd pretty much in like that summer term be
Hmm.
focusing on prep. You'd be going through the summer, and then like you only have the interview sort of way at the end of the year in December, sort of mid-December, just before the
Yeah.
Christmas holidays. Like, do you have any personal tips for actually staying motivated? Like maybe it's just taking a break after a while, allowing yourself to get distracted with Netflix, um, or maybe it's something more intrinsic, like actually reading material that you enjoy. I personally found that was probably a little bit more helpful, although I did do a lot of sort of just reading around the topic that I didn't necessarily enjoy as well. But looking back, probably the bits that I did enjoy allowed me to stay motivated too.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. I think those are the most helpful parts. And I think that's the thing that's maybe the most helpful advice I was given was about, going, finding out, literally podcasts and newspaper articles and the, reading the BMJ, for example,
Mhm.
and books. And I watched loads and loads of documentaries about just, even just like documentaries on YouTube about, BBC Three documentaries and things about drug addiction things. They have all these different things, and it's just that's what I did, because even though it doesn't maybe so much feel like preparation as lying there watching something, but you can say it counts, but it does count. It was really really helpful, and I did manage to bring it up. Whenever I got my that one question, I talked
Yeah,
about my documentary, so it was helpful.
I
But
mean,
yeah.
you've mentioned YouTube. I have to ask you, did you watch Ali Abdaal's videos? Sort of the
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially before, whenever I got my acceptance, I started watching all his videos about like, oh, the essay, his how to write the perfect, how to rank first in Cambridge for medicine, all these things. I was definitely watching all of them. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's sort of it for the Cambridge course, but I mean, is there like a standard set of exams that medics have to do? Like for law, it's very different. Like you don't like Cambridge law is very different to Oxford law, which is different to UCL law.
Mhm.
Is the medicine course sort of a little bit more structured in the sense that exams are the same? Because you'd hope that maybe the doctor that's treating you has
Mhm.
done a standardized set of exams.
Yeah, there's a kind of a baseline specification that all medical schools have to follow for us, and then we have a I'm not sure if everyone has it, but we also have a right hand side which is extension material, which you don't have to do, you don't have to include, but you can include it for
Okay,
extra marks. But we have, yeah, everyone, I think everyone in the country does multiple choice papers at the end of every year, and those are mandatory. But then
okay.
we also get the delight of an essay paper, which is not, I think that's just Oxford and Cambridge maybe. And we do, yes, we do essays as well. And those don't contribute towards our, well, I mean, they contribute towards our ranking in the medical school. But if we fail them, then I don't know. But yeah, but they're not everyone does them. So it's just Oxford and Cambridge.
Just a nice little
Mhm.
extra to make the.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, I guess final question, just to end on a light-hearted note, is there a particularly weird thing that you've had to study as part of the medicine course so far, or something weird
Mhm.
about just Oxford or your college in general that really surprised you? And for anybody who's watching, so if you mention it, they think, "Oh, that's particularly strange." I suppose your story about the your professors telling you about the different ways to kill somebody is
Oh
quite
yeah.
strange.
I think perhaps the weirdest thing is the our problem sheets. So we get given just for one of our tutorials for our anatomy tutorials, we get given the occasional problem sheet. We've maybe had to do three or four by now, but we have our tutor really enjoys setting these, you know, so we'll be given a clinical scenario, maybe 5 lines, and it'll say, you know, and sometimes they'll be fairly normal. It'll be like, oh, this person's got a, you know, they come in, they've got a red and swollen leg, they're on a plane and things like that. And you're going, oh, that's okay. You know, I feel like I know this. But then there's other ones where you'll get, oh, you know, this guy's come in, he's gone blue. And then he climbed up a tree and started eating bark. That is genuinely one that we had. It was like he climbed up a tree and started eating bark. And then what you have to do is you have to somehow go away and spend, you know, kind of hours googling because so, you know, it's either that it's really simple, but it's kind of, you know, but I'm just useless and I can't find it, or it's something that like even Google's never heard of, and he's like, oh, it's this, you know. And well, the tree one ended up that it's so it was a willow tree, and willow bark is where aspirin comes from. So that was like just part of the question was about that.
Oh,
It was like, oh, you know, and he had a, you know, the thing that I don't even remember what the thing was that he had, but it was alleviated by aspirin. So you know, that
oh.
was so yeah.
So two things there. Willow trees contain aspirin, or sort of that's where aspirin is derived from.
Yeah, yeah, the in the bark of the willow tree.
Wow. And
Mhm.
out of interest, I have to ask, is that based on a real case or not? Was that sort of completely fictitious? Have there been people who actually sort of out of instinct have gone to willow trees and tried to sort of like eat the aspirin out of it?
Yeah, I no, I think it was maybe a little bit of artistic license on the
Okay.
behalf of my tutor, but yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, it's really interesting. I do things like that. I keep it, you know, kind of because it's so scientific. Our first 3 years, it's little glimpses like that into the clinical applications that are really they're really good, and I you know I feel like they really motivate me. So.
Yeah, I mean that sounds fantastic. You're sort of making me jealous. I wish I'd studied. Yeah. Well, no, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. And I guess for anybody wondering about the Oxbridge application process, we've partnered with UniReach, and UniReach have mentors such as Rachel, who are able to answer questions that you have about the admissions process and just about sort of the whole Oxbridge experience itself. So if you do want to talk with somebody who is currently at Oxbridge, either Oxford or Cambridge or at a particular college even, just sign up via the link in our bio, and we'll be able to match you with somebody who is able to help. So EasyA has partnered with UniReach on this very special initiative. So just go ahead and sign up in the link from the link in our bio. Yeah, I will just say thank you, Rachel, for your time today. I think the key takeaway that I had from that is that when you're preparing for the interview, the best way to stay motivated is just to read stuff that you enjoy, sort of watch documentaries. I think that's probably my top takeaway for today. And if I were reapplying, I'd probably reapply for medicine if I could. Try and watch a lot of those videos, read around the subject.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me.
Perfect. Yeah, and for anybody who's sort of watching this recorded, we will be hosting another Instagram live tomorrow and throughout the week until Friday. So yeah, just to close out, thanks very much for your time today, Rachel. It was a real pleasure having you today.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody.